guys, I'm so glad you're back. So today I have on my podcast, we might as well call her a regular at this point. I have the very wonderful Sam Valentine of the One Broke Actress podcast and platform. And she's been on the podcast before. And in that setting, she was kind of like a client and we were working through something. But I really wanted to get on here and just shine a bright light on her and hear what she's up to. And then also, I mistakenly mentioned that I talked to a pet psychic a couple weeks ago. And so we're probably going to have to spill the tea on that conversation as well. So please, let's jump into this conversation. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm an actress in Los Angeles, but I'm really interested in this pet psychic.
Oh my gosh. So should we start there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I'll just start. I'm going to spill right in. So just in case anyone who's listening is not familiar with you, Sam, can you share a little bit of your story and what it is you do? And then we'll jump into talking about pet psychics, which, that's what Brian Break's character is all about.
Yeah, that's really what I'm here for. So Sam Valentine, actress based in Los Angeles. I've been here for almost 11 years, which is crazy. And I started the platform One Broke Actress. It was originally a blog, and then it also became a podcast. And now it's pretty bumping Instagram and Patreon and workshops and so much fun stuff. But it's all about sharing the active day-to-day life of working actors, because when I started this 10 years ago, it felt as though no one was really talking about the times when you weren't booking or when you couldn't get an agent, or it felt like the people sharing their stories were really, really successful. And that bothered me and also made me feel like the other. Like I felt like I was the exception to every rule. But it turns out I am one of the many of the community. And so the platform started as sharing that day-to-day life, and it's expanded so much, and as has my life. And I'm also a podcast producer, and I'm a dog mom of 3. I'm a wife. I am just living my best life in Los Angeles.
Oh, I love it. And Sam, wait, last time I talked to you, I don't think you were a wife yet.
I
We've
wasn't.
talked, but not on the podcast. We've
Yes,
talked, obviously. Yeah,
correct.
so
And you
wait.
weren't a fiance.
And I was not a fiance. That's correct. Wait, can we just have a moment for, did you or did you not have 3 wedding dates?
Yes, we finally got married on our 3rd wedding date in September, which is we just snuck it in between Delta and Omicron.
Yeah.
We really just got it in there. It was stressful, but we did it. 37 people, no one got COVID. Best day of my life.
Was it? Was it a
Yeah,
great day? Oh, I'm
hands
so
down.
glad. And you got married in a different state.
Tiny little mountain town called Salida in Colorado.
Beautiful. Yeah, the pictures are beautiful. So if
Thank
haven't go to Instagram yet to look, you need to look. So Sam, let's get started. Let's jump in, and then if pet psychic stuff comes up later, we'll talk about it later. Everybody, we'll just tease them with that for now. All right. So yeah, like you said, One Broke Actress and what you do has expanded, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about that more. So one of the things that I know is that people react so wholeheartedly and authentically to the presence that you create on social media. And what I see in that, and you can tell me if this feels right to you, is just a willingness to be seen, to be honestly seen. And so when you talk about, like, I wanted to show the life of a working actor day to day, up, down, in between all the things that are happening, what has it been like for you to kind of bring this other third eye onto what you see inside of, like, I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing this with other people? What has that experience been like for you?
It's been freeing in a way that I didn't think was possible. When I first started One Broke Actress, I assumed like 2 extremes. Like no one's gonna see this. It's just gonna exist, and I'll just make it. Originally, everything was private. I was sharing them on Facebook, which tells you how old it is, and it just existed in its little corner, and it was just cathartic. It was kind of like a live journal, if anybody remembers live journal. And as it morphed into what it is now, there were points where I went to the other extreme, which was, holy shit, what happens when someone sees this who disagrees with me, who's higher up in the business than me, who devalues my opinion? What am I doing putting myself out there? And I had to have a discussion with myself and several people along the way about the term One Broke Actress. I have people who have told me, "Oh, you're manifesting brokenness." And one, they're not in on the joke, because I think financially, spiritually, physically, mentally, all actors have been broke at some point.
Yeah.
And I think that just putting a name on it and moving past it is humorous, it's funny, it lightens it, and it makes it so much easier to live with. So it freed me up to talk about my career, to call myself an actor even though I wasn't booking, to talk about the struggle of not getting an agent even though I'd been at this for 8 years, to whatever it was. It's given me a lot of space, and in essence it helps me find myself, which is really
Mm.
fun because the platform is just developed as me. There's times that of course I have guests on, and there's other stories, and everyone's ladder is different. But as I've found my voice and myself, it's only helped my acting career because now I
Yeah.
can tell you who I am on camera way, way more than I could back then when I was just trying to be whatever a breakdown was.
Wow. Wow. So there's so much in there I want to unpack. I want to come back first. I want to really let's spill the tea on the calling of the name. So
Mhm.
and most of what you're talking about here is your podcast, because that was the first thing that like tiptoed its way out into the world, right? That was the first
Yeah, the
thing.
blog technically existed first, but the
Okay.
podcast took off at a much faster pace.
Got it. Okay, got it. So the blog, right? So the blog was what you were sharing on Facebook. That's what you were
Mhm.
talking about, and then the podcast. So wait, so let's go back. Spill the tea a little bit on the shade you've been given about the name. Can you give I don't want you to name any names, but can you give like a
I
little
love.
bit of like what people have said? Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm not doing this. Wait, I want to make sure everyone here. I'm not saying this to be gossipy. I'm actually saying because I think there's a really great perspective to grab on here around, I put in this quotes, around haters, around naysayers, because we can make such a huge 100-person chorus of people saying, don't do that, go small, you did this wrong, don't take a step forward. And creative people are challenged by that day in and day out. But when it becomes manifest and someone actually says it to you, it is such a, for me, it's always been terrifyingly harrowing experience when someone's like, you did this wrong. That's not the way to do things. And you're like, well, I need to find myself. Suddenly I'm like disoriented. I need to find myself again. So are you okay to share some of that with us?
Yeah,
Of
absolutely.
course you are, because you're Sam Valentine. You're here to share everything. Great.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a normal thing. You cannot put yourself out there in this world. If there's anything we learned since the 2016 election is you can say anything in this world and someone will disagree with you. You can say the earth is round and someone will disagree with you. Like if that's the basis we're working on now, we should all just understand that you're never going to be quote unquote right all of the time.
Yes.
I exist in a really good perspective where most of the people who follow One Broke Actress and who have been a part of the community are people who are very, very, very supportive.
Mhm.
This is why I don't call people out, is because I know my people will come for them.
You've got a whole squad of people who are going to go after.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that not being the point here, truly
Yeah.
just that harrowing, unique experience of having it said
Yeah.
to you.
It's, I remember the first time. So I did a bigger project where I was the lead before the pandemic. And I don't think it ever came out because of the pandemic. But the producer slash director called me into his office one day while we were filming. And he said, I would need to talk to you about your One Broke Actress.
Wait,
And
did you almost shit your pants, Sam?
no,
Okay.
because here's the thing. You just know when I'm a vibe reader, and
Yeah.
when I meet someone, I can be like, I kind of think you're full of shit, or I
Okay.
think you're trying to prove to me that you know a lot. There's a vibe people give off where they try to prove that they know a lot. And it's
Oh,
palpable.
please. Yes.
And
It's so
it's
unhelpful.
gross. It's gross.
Yes.
That's why I'm
It
so
gives you that
like,
gross feeling. Yes.
and when I talk to people, I want to say like, this is how I feel, but also how do you feel? Like I'm so
Yes.
all about it being a conversation because every time I talk to someone, I learn something new. Anyway, this person was like a little pompous, and I kind of expected him to say something that I didn't agree with.
Mhm.
And he said, I just think you're going to be the lead of this, and it just doesn't coincide with you being a lead actor and also having a platform called Broke Actor. And I sat there quietly and smiled and just let him talk. And he said, maybe we should try like one stoked actress.
Can you please be
And
on a surfboard on the front of your podcast?
I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, listen, the litany of reasons I could have given him, like, that's not verbiage I use. There's a
Right.
humility and a humor to it all. It's not all about money. It's not all about like, I can't wait until I'm in blockbuster films and also still running a platform
Yes.
called One Broke Actress.
Yes.
That to me is the goal. And so I let him talk and I said, you know what? I will take this home and I will think about it. And that was the end of that conversation. I never brought it up again, and he never brought it up again. I
Yeah.
let him say his piece, and I listened, and I disagreed, so I just gently walked out of the situation. I've also had people tell me that somebody in Hollywood wrote a book, and
Okay.
they wrote a book, and they said, they're all about manifesting.
Mhm.
And this person said, there's someone online who keeps calling herself broke. And when 5+ of my followers come to me and says someone talked about you in a book, I know that it's about me. So, I mean, I don't want to be pompous, but like I kind
Yes.
of think it's about me.
Yeah.
And I had to really sit with that and think like, oh, that's such a bummer that they don't get it, that they can't be
Yeah.
as open as I can. And listen, I believe in energies. I'm all about, there's like a vision board behind me.
Yes.
I'm all about like, you can manifest stuff, but you can also have a sense of humor and lightness about this job, because if you don't, you're going to get crushed. You're going to get crushed. And you really have to find your in that you can keep doing it and not get crushed for the next 40, 50 years. And if you
Yeah.
can't take that little piece, if like the just one term makes you feel crazy, as long as it's not offensive or racist or
Yeah.
biased or something like that, of course, then that is something that I think you need to look inward about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always know it's more about them than it is about me.
Well, right. And what I love, one of the things you said beautifully in here is like it's granting them the grace to have their own perspective, which is not to do with you, because you could really turn into a spiral and be like, oh my gosh, should I rename my thing? But one thing I want to point out that if you guys didn't clock this, I think it's really important is, and this is a skill I tell people when they're going into meetings, is when someone brings a new piece of information to you, which this pompous guy was saying, call it one stoked actress or all this stuff, in giving you information. A lot of times I think it's very easy for a creative person to assume I have to be the one who's wrong, and I probably have to make a decision in this meeting. And it's so powerful to say, I'll think about that. And I always say, like, when you're presented with new information, your job is not to make a decision. Your job is to say, cool, I'll think on that. Like, you are allowed. And I would say that I steal this from Oprah. She said she'd go to meetings. She goes, okay, I'm gonna pray on that, because it's new information presented to her. She's like, I'm not ready to make it. It's cool. New information. Cool. I'm gonna pray on that. You do not have to make it. So it's interesting, I think, because we think of most often when we're called to the principal's office, which it could have felt like when you go to the director's office, it's like, oh, I'm in trouble and I need to cover my tracks. I need to cover my ass or something. Right. So that's so powerful. So podcast, I wanted to ask you a question, because when I first came on your podcast, it was you were just kind of doing the podcast and it was going. What kept you going? What was it that kept you going with that? Because how many years did you do the podcast before you started to be like, oh, by the way, maybe I can like talk to people and help them, and like other than the podcast? How long?
A long time.
How long did that
A
go
long
on?
time. This March is.
Hold on. My headset got unplugged. Okay, now I am back.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I'm back.
Water break.
Yes.
This March will be 5 years of the podcast.
Wow.
And
are we gonna have a huge party?
I should. Depending on what variant we're on, perhaps I will throw myself a party. I have no idea. And there are times when I'm grateful because I set up seasons. So I do 12 episodes at a time and then I take a break. I think if I told myself this is ongoing indefinitely forever, I wouldn't have ever started it. And to be fair, when I started it, I didn't plan for a season. I just hit my 12th episode and it was almost Christmas time. And I said, oh, well, that's the end of season 1 of the podcast. And because, podcasts are pretty fluid. And back then there was even less structure than there is now. And so I just called it a day. But there were times in between podcast seasons where I would take off 6 months, 8 months, because my acting career was dead silent. And I felt like an absolute imposter talking about acting. I had to give myself enough space to wait and miss it. And as soon as I missed it, or as soon as I met someone that I thought, I want to talk to you on my podcast, I would start the next season.
Got it.
So it was very fluid, especially at first. Now it's a little more regimented and I have some consistency, but it took me a long time to give myself space to have solo episodes and allow myself to take up my own space and not just plate up my guest because it was really nerve-wracking. And like even you were established when you started your podcast and it's still
freaking out. I sat on 12 episodes for 6 months. Are you kidding? Yeah.
I know.
Freaking out. Like, no, this can happen. No one's going to listen. Everyone's going to listen. They're all going to hate it. Like all of the thoughts I have. Yeah.
Yeah. The back and forth of like far flung, no one's going to listen. Everyone's going to listen. People are going to hate. And for me, the imposter syndrome was the biggest thing. And I don't know why there were times that I didn't just quit. There were times that I remember turning to my now husband and I said, I don't think that I should be doing One Broke Actress anymore. And
Hmm.
he would say, okay, well, you just take a break and come back to it. So I wouldn't post anything on the website. There was times where I thought I just should shut it all down. I should shut it all down and delete it. And so no one ever knows it
And you'd
existed.
kind of go on a secret hiatus that you didn't tell anybody, but you just kind of pulled back.
Yeah, and I didn't have any I had, maybe 400 followers, and like each podcast got like 100 listens or something like that, which is significant considering when I first put the podcast out, I would get like 8.
Right.
So
Right.
we've come a long way,
Yes.
even at that time. But I don't know why I never actually followed through. And I think because I connected my acting career with the One Broke Actress platform as a whole. And
Yeah.
anytime I felt like giving up acting, I would have to take a step back and think, I just think I need a break from focusing on this.
Hmm.
And it's this is when I get a little woo woo because I'm not super spiritual, I'm not super woo woo, but man, I think that I needed One Broke Actress to get me through the pandemic, and I had no idea that I needed it
Hmm.
until we hit radio silence, and I thought, well, I guess I could figure out what colors I actually want to post on my Instagram. I guess I could do another podcast season. I have time because I had done 5 at that point.
Right.
And, I'd done 5 in 3 years. And in the past 2 years, I did 4 more.
Wow.
So it became my lifeline in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I hate everything that happened to so many people in so many traumatic ways. And I sometimes feel selfish for this, but the pandemic changed my life.
Hmm. Speak into that.
I had my first pause that was extended and not
Hmm.
just a weekend. And it leveled the playing field to where we were all doing the exact same thing. I went through a pretty dark phase in the end of 2019, and I would get up in the morning and just start crying. And I would drive to work and pick up kids I nannied, and I would be crying behind my sunglasses in the car. And I would drive by sets of people shooting on my street, and I would start crying. And everything felt heavy. My jobs felt impossible. I worked 3 to 5 jobs a day. And I felt like the acting career was so far out of reach. There wasn't anything happening. And I felt totally stagnant. And when the pandemic hit, everyone was stagnant. Everyone had to stop. And so all of a sudden, myself and all of the actors that I love were doing the exact same thing. We were all watching TV and making cocktails and figuring out what to do with our free time. And I thought, oh, I could make posts about this because we're all doing the same thing. So I felt empowered because I felt like
Mm.
everyone was with me. And as that grew and grew and it kept me going, it got more attention. And then the attention would fuel me for a little bit. And then I would come back to my why, and that would fuel me for a little bit longer. And, it gave me so much space to figure myself out. And, when we had our last podcast, your first episode of the season,
Yeah.
I still hadn't booked in years, like 2 years at least. And I was already planning on starting things for One Broke Actress that were bigger than me. And as I found that space to grow, the day I announced my first working actor workshop, which I was super nervous about, who wants to
Sure.
take a workshop from me? I haven't even booked any. The day I announced it, I booked my first job in like 2.5 years.
Oh my gosh, that is so so now she's like, see, so now I am woo woo spiritual. There's something to it.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
much it's a lot of energy, and I don't think I booked that job because of what I was doing, but I felt so free in my auditions, and I felt so comfortable doing whatever I was doing because One Broke Actress had become a part of my day-to-day life, so I felt like I was back in the acting flow even though I wasn't technically in it.
Right, right, right. That is an amazing story. So
I
in the hunker down, you
know.
found
Mhm.
so much community, and also like I can commune with the people next to me. And so I know if anybody listens to the very first episode of this podcast, it was Sam, and we were talking about the relentless hamster wheel of doing a million things
Mhm.
and slowing down. So when you had like this forced slowdown, it made you really take stock. So uh in the pandemic, for all that it was, like you said, it was so painful for so many of us and so many people, and it still created this different space for you, this different energy that was able to create this blossom for you. So now that we're not I want to say we're through this, but we're not quite through this. But we're maybe lifting mask mandates soon.
Yeah,
Maybe, right?
we're
So we're
it
gonna.
feels like we're like inching toward the endemic. It
I
feels like
scare
this
to
is
say
like
that, but yes,
yeah.
I hate to say it, but yes. I mean, I love to
Yeah.
say it, but I'm scared to say it, but yes.
I
So as we're getting towards that, is there a part of you like, are you relating to, like things are going to get busier again, or do you feel like you've created a kind of footing for yourself for, put in quotes, normalcy, for a different rhythm, what have you put in place, or what is your outlook on that?
This was a big topic we talked about when we recorded our first podcast episode because I said to you, I am so scared of falling back into my old habits of working a bunch of jobs and doing this and that. So I've had to really stay focused on what is it that makes me feel good? What is it that fuels my body, my mind, my bank account, my relationships in all these different areas? And stay really hyper focused on that and not get distracted by shiny objects. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I had someone reach out to me recently and say, "Hey, I'm hiring event managers for this event company. You came highly recommended because it was one of the jobs I used to do. Is that something you're interested in?" And saying no to money is really hard for me. I identify a lot of success and a lot of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like height. There's like
Mm.
a
Status.
a status
Yeah.
to having more money, which that's probably psychology from growing up in a lower middle class family, and I had to say no because I have worked really really hard to put systems in place for my day jobs and
Yeah.
put parentheses on them. So when this airs, it will already be released, but my podcast production company with my friend Ashley launches February 22nd. It is
Yay.
officially open. Yeah, and it's
It's
Fast
like
Forward
days away from right
Productions.
now, just so you guys
It's
know, like that, from
days
where we're doing,
away.
yeah, from where we're recording. Yeah.
Which reminds me I have things on the website I need to edit. But there's always something to do.
Yes.
But it is a job that I love doing, and it fits so well into the pocket of what I also feel good doing because
Mm.
I realized I really like free time. And I
Mhm.
also realized that I tie up free time with laziness. And that to me is the result. It equals mentally a poor actor or like
Ah,
someone who's not working hard
wow.
enough.
If I'm not moving really, really fast, it both means I'm lazy, I'm not making money, and I'm not successful.
Yes.
So like
Yes.
you're like,
And
I've villainized calm, I've villainized relaxation, I've villainized laying around and looking out the window or reading a
yeah,
book. Yeah.
totally. A
Wow.
hundred
Or
percent.
I should
And
say
it's
weaponize it against yourself even
a
more
hundred
strongly. Yeah.
percent. Both of those. And I've had to really fight against it. And my husband knows
Wait,
my
what's
trigger
Caleb
word is
say? Yeah, what does
lazy.
he say
Yeah,
about this?
he says because my trigger word is lazy. Like
Yeah.
if someone would call me lazy or has called me lazy, like it happened. I shared an Instagram reel where I did like a screenshot of my calendar, and it's like morning routine, workout, dog walk, and then work, and then meetings, and then go to bed. 'Cause people were like lazy actors, da 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 da. And I had to, first of all, I turned off comments, which is a 10 out of 10 move. Uh, but I have had to really change my definition of what lazy is and what actually gets me going and what
Yeah.
I actually want my schedule to be. Now, I'm a very privileged person, and I always need to say this because I'm not playing with the same set of cards that someone else is. And the cards I'm playing with are specific to me, just like they are specific to someone else. But I had to work really hard to figure out what job can I actually do. Then I,
Mm.
used my circumstances and figured out I took a business class and figured out what do people come to me for? What could I make in a business and all these things. And I realized that entrepreneurship is actually something I enjoy and I like
Yeah.
working with someone else and for someone else in a steady pace. I like independent contractor work and I put all these things together. And at the same time, my friend Ashley was like, "We should have our own media company." And I thought, all right. And it's just the ball just was rolling. And so now I edit a couple podcasts a day and then I walk my dogs and I work out and I have these plug and play systems to where I feel like I cover all my bases
Mhm.
and I don't feel guilty that sometimes I finish work at 4. Sometimes
Please.
I don't have a lot of work to do. And so I'll work out until 10 and then I'll go on a leisurely walk and then I'll do 2 hours of work and then I'll make Instagram posts. It just changed everything when I allowed myself to figure out what fuels me for my work and not let it be dependent on what other people view as productive or successful.
That's
It's
so
hard.
good. Yeah, I'm sure. So I'm just going to share as someone who, Sam and I, we're partners. We've worked on stuff together. So we're
Mhm.
working on something right now. And Sam sent this email to me and I was like, this bitch, I want to be her. I just want to look at the email right now. It says like, I'm not taking any meetings until March, I think is what it said. And I was
Yes.
like, bitch, I'm not taking any meetings until March too. Like, I was like,
Yes.
the boundary here is like amazing. Can you talk us through that just a little bit? And then I want to go back to what you said, because I want to really connect it to acting. But first, can you talk me through
Mm.
this like incredible, clear boundary? Also, wait, before I even go there, before I even
Yeah.
ask you answer the question, hold on to that question. I just want everyone to notice that sometimes when we put out a boundary, we think that it inspires in someone else, like, you're being mean. Notice for me, it was like, oh my God, she's amazing. Just want to make sure everyone notices that boundaries usually inspire, I believe, in affection and also like belief in the other person, as opposed to inspire like they're putting me off. Right. So I just wanted you to hear how I received that, because I want to just, people struggle with boundaries, which is why I say that. So tell us about your boundary setting and how you figured it out. Now, I'm not saying you got it all perfect yet, Sam, but from
No.
the outside, it looks pretty damn good.
Well, therapy is a good thing, and I highly recommend someone find someone to talk to if you feel like you can't set boundaries. I have really honed in on the fact that I need to not have very many things on my schedule. If I have a day that has more than 3 meetings, I start to go a little bonkers the day before because I anticipate.
Mm,
It's a big thing I deal with my personality is I'm constantly anticipating the next thing. So while I'm working out, I'm also making my task to-do list so I'm really on point, and then I'm also defrosting chicken for dinner and I throw a load of laundry in. And I like to do a few of those things at once, but if my schedule is jam-packed, I get anxious, I get upset, I don't sleep well, and I'm not good for the people I'm trying to be good for. So,
mm,
I'm not helping anyone and I'm not helping myself. So, I started to put really tight ramifications on my schedule. Now, having a work from home job, it's very easy for me now to put that control in place.
sure, yeah.
I order my groceries now, and it saves me from being stressed about having to go get them and bring them upstairs and put them all away and make sure I have the list and da da da. It that little task that cost me an extra 10, sometimes $20 is monumental
Yeah.
for saving me 3 hours of time. And that can be 3 hours of time I might spend working. And my
Yeah.
work, now I know how much my hourly worth is worth. Or it might be 3 hours of time that I spend hanging out with my dogs and listening to my own podcast
Yeah.
because that helps me. And giving myself permission to do those things and saying that it adds to me in the long run and not detracts from me is huge. So I adjusted my Acuity, which is my online calendar schedule, and I don't allow more than 3 meetings a day on my schedule. And I put 15 to 30 minutes between each thing, depending on how long it is, because I got to take the dogs out. And if I rush to take the dogs out, rush back inside and like
Mhm.
pour a cup of coffee and da, 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 it reminds me of old Sam who would eat in our car
Yes.
and
I remember that, Sam.
like shove food in my face and then like run into your house for one of our meetings.
Yes.
And I don't like that girl because she's not good to herself and she's not good to other people. And
Mm,
if I know that that leads me to burnout, and if I have the privilege of changing my schedule in order to make myself better and ease off myself a little bit, that leads me to a longer game so I can keep playing in the acting world consistently. I can keep showing up on social media. I can be present for my husband from like 6 p.m. on. Uh, some days more, some days less. Euphoria is really important to keep your eyes on, but it's changed how I and the frequency at which I function. And although it might seem like I'm not getting as much done as I used to, I am getting more effective work done in the long run, and that to me
yeah.
is so much more important.
Yeah. And Sam, I just heard like inside of the way you're talking about this, you have this huge argument inside of yourself of what lazy is.
Yeah.
Then you saying like, I'm only taking 3 meetings a day was a huge conversation around like, am I being lazy for taking 3 meetings a day? Should I be taking 10 meetings a day? How do other people do this? Let me look at other people's habits. Are their habits better than mine? And actually going inward and saying, I am energized and stay energized when I have 3, because actually it's the day before that I'm thinking about, which is such a really, I think, wild way to look at your wild, meaning like not, maybe not natural for a lot of people to look at
Hmm.
how am I affected, right? Because then I can just imagine, oh, you suddenly have an audition tomorrow. Great. There are 3 meetings for me to move, not 6. Like even
Yes,
that part of taking care of it.
exactly.
Yeah. And so
Exactly. And then, you lose If I want to work on, if I get a last minute audition, I'm like, oh crap, I have so much to do. And also now there's a script. There is always time in my day now. If I got a scene, I could stop and work on it. And I built that schedule like that. And I test drove it. So there was like 3 months where I got up at 5 a.m. every single day to see if that helped me, to see if I
And
was more productive in the mornings. I'm a 6 a.m. girl. That's what I figured out.
okay.
That's what I learned from that experiment. But that was the fun of the last couple of years, is I was an experiment. Like I played with, when do I actually like to work out? When do I prefer to walk my dogs? What's the best way? Do I eat dinner like with Caleb, or do I eat earlier without him? Like figuring out those little pieces of my day and how I can plug and play them differently, and what works right now versus what works in December. It's been really fun, and I love my schedule now. I
Yeah.
love
Oh,
it
I
so
love
much.
that. And I'll just say, something is, we talk about this sometimes with my clients, is about creating a dream schedule where you're like looking at, if I'm day looked at, I think we did that once at one point, right? Like if
Hmm.
I could say exactly what I wanted my day to look like, what does it do? And what would that be? What time would I go to this, or what day would I
Yeah.
go to that? And you test driving it, I think, is the biggest part, because I think so quickly, so many of us will be like, it needs to look good now. Once it looks, I'm going to know when it looks good. Like, no, actually, we probably have to try it. And like, oh, I thought that I liked getting up at 6. I actually think if I get up at 7:30, I am so much better all day long. And I'm not
Yep.
lazy for getting up at 7:30. It's okay that I get up, because actually look who I am when I get up. It's like the looking back at yourself, right? So I just love
Yeah.
that you tried it and you tested it. That's such a big piece of it.
Yeah.
So
It's fun.
relating this to acting for a second, let's just really,
Mhm.
because to me, it makes perfect sense why it relates to acting. But when you're thinking about it, how do you relate this to how you serve the audience that follows you?
The more that I can be inside of myself, and I can enjoy sitting with myself, the better I am at sharing that with other people. It's when I get the finicky about like the way I look, or how much sleep I've gotten, or oh god, I'm so stressed about my bank account. When I'm worried about a bunch of other things, I'm not thinking about the person who's asking me questions.
Hmm.
I'm worried about my own problems. Then I don't have time for someone else's problems. And I'll answer, DMs in like a kind of a bitchy way. Like I'll be like, I don't know, where do you live? That's where you would find your acting classes. Like, whereas there is a more nuanced way to show up and to be helpful to people, and that's really important to me, because actors are taught so often that we are the lowest on the totem pole, especially until we're in the 1%. We believe that that
Mm.
is where we belong, that we don't get to speak up for ourselves, that we don't get to take up space, that we shouldn't ask questions, or that. And so I want to make a platform where people can ask the dumbest questions, like, what is a self tape? Like, ask
Yes.
me what an audition is, and I
Yes.
will give you a thought out answer, because nobody else is going to let you ask that question. Like, I did a full podcast that was a step by step on set. Like, you're gonna park, you're gonna find the producer, you're gonna find like the assistant, the PA, and then you're like, it was like very very small. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna eat lunch in your trailer, and then you're gonna go put your costume back on. Like, it was so nuanced.
Yeah.
And I had so many people reach out to me after that, and they said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I booked my first job, and I knew what was happening when I got to set, and I didn't feel like a
Mm.
green. I didn't feel like an idiot. I felt like I could keep up, and I could ask questions if something felt different than what you said. And I was so happy, because all these people that reached out felt like they were just going in blind to a scenario where they weren't allowed to ask
Yeah.
questions. And
Right.
if I don't take care of myself and give myself the time in which it takes me to be freely myself and like take care of myself, then I am not going to be a platform for other people to lift them up either. That is the
Yeah.
huge thing I've learned.
Huge. And as I think about that, I even think about how the actors listening now and listening to what you're talking about, this is how we want this in their lives. They want this in their
Mhm.
lives. They have this ability to create these boundaries. And I think that sometimes so many actors are told, and I'm sure you speak about this too, is like, get a flexible job. That's your number one thing to do. Just find a job that's flexible and just live your life all around it, like your flexible job.
It's so
And
archaic.
right,
It
it's
obsessed me so much.
it makes me so mad, and it makes me. And you tell me what I'll tell you what makes me mad. You tell me what makes me.
Yeah.
Here's why it makes me mad: is so many actors then will, and this might not be you. So if you're listening and this isn't you, I don't want you to feel called out anyway. I want you to be like, just really talk about what makes me angry about it. Is that like you're then settling maybe for a crap job that doesn't pay you what you're necessarily worth or what you're able to do, because you're sacrificing it for this flexibility. And I say, are you getting for the 5 auditions that you need that super flexible job for in the first place? Like, what? It's so controlling to the possibilities that you have. And I have known so many actors who get normal, I put in quotes, jobs, and they go, they're so invaluable to that business. They're like, yeah, sure, you can totally go to auditions. We're not like, I can't say every company's like that. That's not fair. But because I
Yes.
know actors are so damn fabulously resourceful that when you work in an office or you work in a whatever, everyone is like, that person's so good at their job. Like you are so amazing at whatever that job is most often that everyone's like, yeah, you can definitely go to an audition because everything's going to be covered because you're going to cover every crack that could possibly, like, I just know you're going to be good at it. Right. Tell me, how does this frustrate you a little, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's listening and not watching the YouTube, I'm just like nodding my head, like, yeah,
Yes.
like this is like I'm like holding up my lighter at a concert. Uh, Listen, I'm launching a full company, and
Yeah.
I feel like a few years ago I would have thought I was insane. And I also, if I saw an actor say they were starting a company or getting a full time job, my knee jerk reaction 5, 6 years ago would have been, oh, so they're giving up acting.
Oh my God. Yes, Sam, you nailed it. Yes. Oh, they're failed. They're
Yep,
not really,
they
their
didn't. They
career's not
didn't
going
make
well.
it.
Yeah.
They didn't make it. They quit.
Ooh, that hurts.
It hurts, and it's fucking bullshit because
Yeah.
it's just first of all, let's address like the number one thing that is wrong about that is that we now live in self-tape world. You are very rarely going to get an audition that's at a time, and you'll know in advance because you'll have had the original audition and you'll know kind of when the callback is. So you don't need a a nighttime bartending job anymore. That sucked the life out of me, by the way. I bartended for years. I'm really good at it. And so I thought this was it. I have to keep doing this. But then I would go home at 3 and I would have had shots with like the customers and I would be feel like shit the next day and like all of these things. You don't need to do that anymore if you don't want to. You can work a quote unquote regular job. You can be an independent contractor. You can start your own company. You can up your value. And you can, by the way, you can spend time upping your value. And I did a whole Patreon podcast about this because it's so important to me. You can be a cog in a bigger machine should you
Mhm.
choose, because you just have to work to have the systems in place so you can handle auditioning in the non-working times. So that means you might have to work extra hard because when you get home at 5 or 6 o'clock, or when you clock out, quote unquote, you might be having a few bites of dinner and then setting up your self-tape, and you might have to have virtual readers who can come, or a very understanding person, or if you're a parent, you have to do it after the kids go to bed or whatever it is. But you and I both know really awesome, amazing, successful people who have continued to do that. I mean, I just think of Dewan and like it's I just I'm floored that this is still something we're telling actors. Like you should be, it's like telling them they should be financially weak and schedule sad and spend so much time taking energy from themselves, when in reality it's going to take you a long time to get to the point where you don't need a job.
Yeah. And
Potentially a while, oh, maybe
and
never. I
I
don't
know a
know.
lot of actors who make money as actors and can make a good chunk of money and still want a job because they want more security or they want to send their kids to private schools or so
Yes.
just like, and the truth is I think there's also this thing where we can discredit actors who may have gone to school for acting, maybe like, well, my major was acting, so I certainly can't be good at fill in the blank anything other than waiting tables or being a bartender. And it's just so not true. And I know there's people
Yeah.
here who really get that, but I just really want to speak into that. And there's also like no shame in being a server if it does in fact make it awesome for your life. And there's certain people who are really good at having that, like, I love my serving job. I'm energized by it. I do 3 shifts a week. Like there are certain people who are really good at it, but I think a lot of people default into that. And I just really want people to get more conscious around it. Yeah.
Totally. And I think people sometimes hear like, oh, I have to up my value. Oh, shit, I have to go back to college. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. We live in the era of YouTube, of Skillshare, of I learned everything I know about podcast production, one, for doing it for myself mediocrely to badly for years, and then figuring out how I could do it better. And two, by asking other people for help. And then three, by going to online resources that were free or low cost. I think Skillshare is like $30 a
That's
month.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can invest not just money but time into this process. Like you don't need to figure this out tomorrow. Like you
Mm.
can start working now for something. I had an actress reach out to me and she said, I'm thinking about doing this transcribing program. It's going to cost me a pretty penny, but then I'll be able to work on my own time and transcribe for other people. She was like, do you think it's worth the money? And I said, would it make your schedule better? Would it make you more money? Would it make you happy? Do you feel like you can still act around it? She was like, yeah, all those things. I was like, then it's a fuck yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
hell yeah. I do.
go.
And I also think, yeah, what you just nailed to hit the head on is you may need to invest in yourself to be able to have that
Mhm.
conscious job choice. So that might be possible. You may be like, oh, I probably should know how to use Microsoft Office. Maybe. I don't know if that's necessary, but let's pretend like I need to get really good at Excel, whatever the job is, right? I'll just
Mhm.
say, like, when I was in New York City and I was acting, and I was in a show for 2.5 years called The Donkey Show, if anybody remembers it. It's a Midsummer Night's Dream told through disco songs. It was a great gig. I had 6 shows a week, but at the same time, and I don't know why I did this. I think there was something wrong with me, or maybe my work ethic as a Midwestern Ohio boy. But like, I also had a day job. Like, I probably could have just like been in the show, but during the day I had a temp job, and I
Wow.
was like the king of the temp job, that even though I was running off to auditions all the time, because like I knew what I was doing and I could commute. One of the things that actors are trained in is look at someone else's face and figure out what their problem is and make it better. Like, that is literally what Meisner is about. Like, get what you want or make their lives better, right? Which is why actors are so good at customer service, or so good, I think, even in like I'm saying, in an office situation, of being like,
Mhm.
I can read the temperature of your energy around this and it's causing you anxiety, and like, let me see if I can fix it. Like, that piece of, we discredit that skill you've worked so hard to create in your inside of yourself, and it's such a tool. People love to be around that. We have to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god,
Cool.
I love that. I also
Yeah.
think there's something to be said for like it's nice to have a job that has a checklist and there's a thing that you do continuously and it gets you from A to Z because acting is such a clusterfuck
Yes.
that having a checklist to check off that you leave and you're like, wow, I accomplished something today, that sometimes that is worth its weight in gold.
Oh, and also being able to clock out. Like, I love a job where
Yes.
I mean, that's not the same probably for you or for me, because our jobs we are our own jobs in many ways. But like, to be able, like, oh, and now I'm leaving, and my mind space gets to be about acting class tonight, or the character I'm going to play,
Yes.
whatever. So you mentioned something a few minutes ago about people sliding into your DMs and like asking questions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And what do you hear most often? Like, is there a consistent question that comes up a lot?
There's a couple. I think I get a lot of people who ask two separate groups of people. One, how do I get started? It feels like they're just, they maybe live somewhere else or they want to do this eventually or they live in LA and they just have no idea how you even begin. And those are the people I'm like, check out the Working Actor Workshop. This
Yes.
is a really great place for you because that's like ground up. How do you pay rent? How do you meet people? That's everything. And then I have a separate group of people who are a little bit above that. And
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of where I'm at. And they ask me questions a lot that I can't give them answers to yet
Hmm.
because I haven't gotten there.
Hmm.
And I'm super open about that fact. I am at I still audition for co-stars, but I also audition for guest stars. And occasionally I get a series regular audition.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I'm like a 2.5 if we're going for 4 levels,
If
right?
we're
Like
gonna,
yeah,
well,
and every level
I
is
don't like to believe
harder.
in levels, but I'll let you go for it because it's making your point right now. Totally get it. Yes.
I'm like, I'm at a point where it's no longer green, that I have
Yeah.
relationships. I'm at the place where I know there is a certain point that I think you connect to, and people who hear this will know what I'm talking about. When you no longer question whether or not you're a good actor, but
Mm.
you question when you're going to get seen. And it's a beautiful place to be because I'm not so stressed about, do I actually suck and no one's telling me? Is this why I'm not
Mm.
booking jobs? It's just like waiting for the math and the pieces to fall into place where a role just fits you.
Mhm.
I think it's almost harder because you, it's like I liken it to fitness where you remember like we did CrossFit together many moons ago and there's like newbie gains where you get to the business and you get to CrossFit and you're like, oh my God, I lifted like 200 pounds. I lifted 300 pounds. And it happens so fast in the beginning.
Mhm.
And I feel like when you start your acting career, it's like, oh my God, I'm in a class. This is amazing. Holy
Yes.
cow. I got my first commercial. It's amazing. Oh my God, I got my first non-union movie. And it tends to feel fast. And then once you hit like joining SAG and having an agent manager and hiring level projects, you hit not a plateau, but it feels like a plateau because the increments of change are so small.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get out of that mindset of like, I did something wrong. I need to backtrack, go back to fix
Mm.
myself. And a lot of actors are asking me, I get a lot of branding questions, which I love. I do coffee calls where I have actors chat with me and we go through their like headshots and resumes. And I'm like, listen, get rid of that picture. Get rid of that picture. You're so funny. Why do you look so serious in this picture? You're not a leather jacket girl. Uh, and I love those questions, but there's a certain level that I can't answer those questions yet because I haven't gotten there.
Yeah.
And I
I see
can't
that.
wait. I can't
Yeah.
wait to be able to answer those questions. But it's that's probably some of the most consistent
Got it.
questions that I get.
Well, I love
Yeah.
that you're saying that too, because there's something about, I think that what you're talking about is the moment you experientially, I think most actors can understand, like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. But I think what you're
Mm,
talking about is you experientially are like, oh, I'm in the marathon part now. Like, I am
mm,
here, and
mm.
oh, now I feel the marathon part of it. Because at the beginning, you can feel like, yes, this is sure, I believe it's a marathon, but like, feels pretty bouncy and sprinty right now. Look at all the people giving me water cups along the way. Yay, right? And they're like, oh,
100%.
less water cups. Okay. And oh, now I got to think about, like, where do I want to live? And maybe I'm thinking a little bit about, am I going to get settled down with someone? Like, that part starts to come up. And so there's
Mhm.
other things that life starts to show up a little bit more. So in all this, this might be our last question. We'll see. So I was thinking about you today, of course, and I got nervous because, like, I am such a huge fan, and you're so articulate in a way that is different than the way that I am articulate, and so it
Mm.
really is easy to um, just like idolize and get excited about having you on the podcast. So I just really am so glad you're here. So I
Thank
had a question
you.
for you. So when I look at you, I see a lot of you walking through your career with such honesty and vulnerability, and in the way that you serve others. And what do you see as a limitation for yourself? Is there anything that you have noticed? Like, here's where I know, like, this is a wall for me, or this is something I'm not over yet, or
Mm. Yes, I still have imposter syndrome every single day. I am working on just accepting the fact that that's part of this business and it's part of being a creative. I feel so big sometimes in the way I can show up on social media or like in this podcast room. I feel like I'm like, we could talk like this for hours, Brian.
yes.
Like we could keep this going. I feel like my media training is at a 10. Like I love this stuff. And then sometimes when it comes to auditions and bookings and things like that, I still feel like a beginner. And like
Mm,
I said, I'm not questioning, is my acting good enough? I just tend to make myself smaller than I need to be a lot of times. And I'm still figuring out where I belong in terms of the roles I'm auditioning for. And I feel like I have a lot to offer, and sometimes I feel like I almost have too much.
I want you to feel that way. That's exactly the way I think people should feel. It's like you are. Someone said once, I forget. I think it might have been Marianne Williamson, but she's like, "What do you think you are, God's gift?" Yeah, that's what the response should be. Yep, I sure do. Or
Uh,
if you don't believe God, whatever, universe, Oprah, whatever you believe. But I could think
mhm.
that. So, but keep speaking into that. What you were saying, though, you're like, you're too much.
Yeah, I sometimes I wonder if I'm, going I'm like, are these the right roles? Like I'm clearly if I don't get every role, does it mean it's the right ones or am I doing this? And I also have a limitation of there is a line, and I'm sure you feel this way too, of I can share a lot of my life up to a certain extent,
Mm,
but there are some things I struggle with that I don't necessarily put onto social media.
sure.
I There's parts of my career where I'm like, I'm not sure where to go from here. I'm going to tag someone in. And once I figure this out, then I will come back and talk about it.
Mm,
But there are things with, I am at a point where right now I'm waiting for some footage to air of some cool stuff I did last year. And I don't have a lot to do in the meantime. I am, auditioning as the auditions come. I flex my muscles I'm back at JRS taking audition camp because I realized, I work out every day, but I'm not going to the gym for my acting career, and I need to make sure I do that. So I'm back in the gym, quote unquote,
yeah.
like doing auditions every single week. I have a fantastic commercial agent. I have a fantastic theatrical agent and print and voiceover. I feel like I'm in a holding period, and sometimes there's not a lot for me to do right now,
Sure. What do you
except
start to spin, or do you keep it tight?
I start to spin. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a notebook that's like it's called Spiral,
Okay. Is
and
it a
when I start to
spiral notebook?
spiral, I fill
Because
it
I
out.
want it
No,
to
it's
also
it's
be a.
on my iPad. Amy McNabb, Actors Encouraged, made it for me,
I love her.
and she's the best. And like we call it my spiraling journal. And when I start to spiral, I take one of those pages out and fill it out. That is something that I don't share very often. I'll share if I'm in a funk or if like something's down, but there are just I feel like I'm kind of hitting a wall in terms of things I can do until my next project airs.
Hmm.
And sometimes I worry that then that means I'm not like living as an actor often enough. Perhaps I'm not. Is there more I should be doing, which is something we all struggle with. Even with my hard boundaries of work versus play versus actor work versus whatever. Sometimes I'm worried that I'm not checking a box. And that is something I struggle with. And I struggle with sharing because I'm like, what if I'm not giving these actors enough? What if there's more that I should be telling them because I'm missing something? And it feels like it's my job to take care of other people, which I know that it's not. But sometimes I feel that way, that it is more my job and that I need to figure out my next immediate step and then I need to share it with the world. So that is something I am currently working my way through.
Yeah, it also sounds like what you just said is exactly the next thing to share. Is not feeling like you know what your next step is a beautiful thing. I appreciate you sharing that today. So I'm going to toss this is actually going to be our last question because you asked me this question and you asked me this question. I was like, that's the best question ever. So I'm tossing it back at you. What has your audience taught you? What has your community taught you?
Oh my God, so many things. They've taught me so many things. There's not a single day that I'd get on social media, because that's the main place that I touch base with them, that I don't learn something. And that could be from another creator's Instagram. It could be from a DM. It could be from an email. I learn something every single day. And that alone, I think, is a huge lesson that I'm never going to know it all. I'm never going to be it all. And I can just consume and learn to the best of my abilities. I also think that they have taught me that an acting career comes in so many shapes and sizes. And I used to get a little, I don't want to use the word judgmental, but I used to think that an acting career looked a certain way. And it often looked like the box that I exist in. And when people were in a different body or a different acting type or excelled at different things, I would see them post something random or do an improv show. And I would, in my brain, this is like me 10 years ago, would say like, that's not going to be it.
Yes.
And then I see them a few months later and they're in a big show.
Yeah.
And I think, what the fuck do I know? They did, like, their impersonation of Jay Leno landed them on this major show because of something. Like, there's just, they show me every single day that there's no one way, and any preconceived notions I have about what this career looks like and how I'm supposed to function in it can be true or they can be completely false, and both can be true at the same time.
It's like paradox on top of paradox on top of paradox.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's like catch-22 in Infinity Sign. And I'm floored by watching people's careers blossom in ways that I did not think that were possible. And listen, I've been outpaced by tons of actors who have found me 5 years ago, who've been like my number one people. We've talked all the time on Instagram. I would say like at least 5 to 10 of them have triple the credits I do now. And it used to make me uncomfortable. I used to think, well, that's not fair. I've been working in the majorist market for the longest time, and clearly like I've been working the hardest. Says who? And says who that like the market is the thing or the person is the thing. And there's just so much room for so many more stories and people. And I have had to eat a lot of humble pie in learning that lesson. And now I'm just, anytime I see someone book, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Whatever makes you stronger makes me stronger. Write down what you learned on set. Now I reach out to them like, hey, did you learn anything today on set? Anything weird happen? You want to share a lesson with me and I'll write a blog post about it? So now it's just the rising tide like brings up all ships, and the acting career looks different on every single person and moves at a different pace.
That's so great. That is so great. And I love that that's the journey that you're on. And I love just, again, always wowed by your vulnerability and authenticity. And so glad to hear from you. Now, before we call it a day, I'm sure tons of people are like, I want to hear more. And where can I see more? And I know you've got some classes coming up. Can I just hand you the mic to just spill a little bit of like where to follow and what's coming up so that people can be on track for that?
Absolutely. So at onebrokeactress is the Instagram. It's the TikTok, which I'm supposed to start doing soon. And
I know we both sigh. We both sigh when we think about that. Yes. Okay.
I know I'm tired. And onebrokeactress.com is the website. It's getting a really fun revamp in the next month or two, which is really exciting. And the there's two things that are mainly my bread and butter, which is, of course, the free things exist in the email list and the Instagram and the podcast, of course. Those are all like free content. You can steal all of my things, get as much from me as possible. I also, if you are in the dollar family, you want to be a part of that team, I have a Patreon and it has a couple different tiers. There's a tier where you get one-on-one work with me. There's a tier that just includes study halls, and there's one that just creates the community. It's like from $4 to $80. It's whatever
Awesome.
you want it to be. And I also have the working actor workshop, which is start to finish how to get from the idea of wanting to be a working actor to actually working in a major market. And that is full for the class in March, but we have another class in June and a class in October. And you can join any of those now. And there's
Awesome.
payment plans, and it's like a really nice price. And I made sure that the payment plan and the full price are the same because I never want to because I never want to discriminate against the way someone wants to pay for something. So everything's very flexible, and you know, if you want a t-shirt or a hat that says copy credit meals, you can come at me.
They're so cute. You guys, the t-shirts are no joke. So we will make sure we link to all of that in the show notes. And I'll just spill real briefly. Sam and I have something cooking up in April, and we'll let you.
I'm so excited.
We cannot wait. And it has to do with how you represent yourself. So we'll let you know when that's ready to spill. So wait, Sam, I forgot. We might have a coda to this conversation. Do we want to talk about the dog psychic real quick?
I don't even care if it makes it in the edit. I need to talk about
okay, it's gonna make it in the edit. Okay, so there's a woman. Her name is Sue Pike. You need to look her up on Instagram. She's pretty incredible. She was in the New York Times. So my partner and I, my fiance, I need to get used to that word. So my fiance, his friends had used this woman before to speak to their dog, and we were like, this is the wackiest, wildest. I don't know if I can say yes to this, but we're gonna try it. So we have to send photos beforehand of the dog, and then you also have to send her the questions that you want to ask, and then you have to tell your dog for the few days follow up beforehand, like, listen, you're going to be talking to a woman named Sue, and you have full permission to say whatever you want to say to her. So we have to say that to our little Henry. So I'll make sure I link to the photo somewhere of my dog in the show notes or something. And then you get on this phone call with her. It's not even on Zoom. It's on the phone. And she's like, hi, I've already checked in with Henry. He said no to Reiki today because she can give them Reiki. So he said no thanks because he wanted to be very chipper and awake for our conversation. Now, I wanted to be like, this is just wacky, whatever, right? I've never seen my dog behave more weirdly during this phone call in my entire life. So our dog is not yet 2 years old. He's super bouncy, likes to run around, play with his toys. During this call, he sat right next to us the entire time, did not move, did not walk away, did not have a toy, was just with us the entire, was really weird. And weird, cool, right? And so, so my fiance said to me, I just decided this year's the year I'm going to believe in magic. And so he said, I'm going to believe everything she says, which is like the cutest thing ever, right? So,
by the way, what a person for you.
So she's like, Henry is Jake's spirit guide and has known him in a past life. And one of you is the silly one, that would be me, and one of you is the one who thinks too much, that would be him, and he's always in the room whenever we've had couples counseling, and she goes, and one of you needs to talk about your feelings more. That's not me, but I was like, Henry's listening to our things. And then we had like really like daddy kind of questions, like, do you like your food and things like that. And so she also told us, you need to know that sometimes when I'm speaking to the dog, I might speak in a funny voice because that's when I'm channeling the answer. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the voice of your dog. That's just what happens. So when we asked, like, do you like your food? And so she came back. Let me ask him. She gets quiet and she goes, variety be nice, variety. And we're like dying, but also like, oh, what's right? Like, also like the voice part of it really like set us off a little bit, but it was amazing. Like, she was so clearly focused on our dog. So if you believe in magic, it was amazing. He also told us like what he thought about his crate, how we have in the morning, he doesn't sleep with us, but in the morning we let him come climb up in the bed with us. And he really is he's the most cuddly he is ever going to be all day long. And we just had her ask him about that time, and he goes, magic time. And it was like the cutest, like, yes, he loves it.
Why do I want to cry?
I know, right? It was kind of feeling, so if you have the desire to communicate with your animal, I could not recommend it more highly just for the experience alone. Oh, look at that baby. You guys have to look on YouTube because you're getting to see little baby doggy right now.
This is Solo. Oh my God. I can't tell. I mean, we have voices for all of them. Like, they all have very distinctive personalities.
Wait, can I hear his voice? Is it him?
Solo's just a little boy, and he likes to get up and play. Every morning is Christmas morning, and I love my ball and my sisters and my mom and my papa.
Oh my
I can't believe I
God.
just did that on the microphone for
I'm
you.
so glad you did. You guys, I think that is enough of us today. Just like cooing about our baby doggies. But I wanted to share that with you. Of course, we will also link to the incredible pet psychic in the notes.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Really, really. I just love talking to you.
Always a pleasure, and I
I know you'll
can't
be
wait
back.
to work together
All right.
so soon.
All right. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.